live extreme new climate weather UK 2022 forecast.
The point is they're getting more often, they're happening more often, and they're becoming more intensive. In 1976, the maximum reported temperature was 35.9 degrees Celsius. This time, by late Monday afternoon, a temperature of 38.1 had already been recorded. Then there's this from NASA. It's a chart that shows global temperatures compared to expected levels in June 1976. As you can see, parts of Western Europe were well above them. This is the same chart
Today for 19th of July.
Europe is hot again, but higher temperatures are much more widespread. And what's happening now is part of a bigger shift in our climate. In 2019, the BBC...
Well, 19th July 2022, sorry.
10 warmest years all occurred since 2002. And so in 2022, we have higher top temperatures, more widespread high temperatures, an overall increase in global temperatures, and in the UK, extreme heat is becoming more common. Heat waves is one of the clearest signs in extreme weather of human influence on climate. It's one of the extreme weather events that we can be most confident about are being affected by rising global temperatures. And this does connect to humans. The Met Office says it's 10 times more likely for the UK to have a 40-degree day than in a climate unaffected by human influence. But that influence remains. Global carbon emissions increased through the 20th century. They're increasing now. And the UN is clear on the consequences. Human activities, it says, have warmed the atmosphere, ocean and land.
Aye.
And scientists say extreme heat comes with that. We can expect that if we don't do anything about these emissions, that by the end of the century, we'll be looking at these kinds of 40-degree days in the UK every 3 to 4 years. 1976 was a hot summer, but what's happening in 2022 is not the same thing.
There you go.
This is the shape of things to come in the future. Where does that leave our transport network? We already know that there have been cancellations and airports closed in the last 24 hours. What's the plan for the next couple of days and beyond? We can speak now on Breakfast Live to the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, who joins us. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Hope you're dealing with the heat okay, Mr. Shapps, in the studio.
Doesn't look like he is. No, you're not. You're struggling with that, Boris. Boris is does fun and games, isn't he?
Should they leave the house? Should they get on a train? Should they go to the airport? What their travel plans?
So Prime Minister, he's not doing his job properly at the moment.
Given the disruption that could be ahead.
Current Prime Minister.
Apply common sense will be the first thing to say. Stay out of the direct sunlight. And also, depending on the nature of your journey and the reason for it, you might want to consider rearranging your day around it, particularly to avoid the hottest part of the day, if that's possible. We've seen a considerable amount of travel disruption, as your report just suggested. We're probably going to see the hottest day ever in the UK recorded today, and infrastructure, much of which was built from the Victorian times, just wasn't built to withstand this type of temperature, and it will be many years before we can replace infrastructure with
He's got the money for it, the admin at the moment.
Temperatures are just so extreme. We saw pictures over the weekend of rail workers frantically painting under the tracks white to try and reflect the heat, to try and
Third rail.
The tracks from buckling. Can our network cope with this kind of weather? The simple answer at the moment is no. And you know, where those tracks are obviously 40 degrees in the air, on the ground that could be 50, 60, 70 and more. So you get a severe danger of tracks buckling. And what we can't have is trains running over those and then a terrible derailing. So we've got to be very cautious and conscious of that, which is why there's reduced speeds on large parts of the network. It's not just the tracks, of course, the overhead lines on the roads. We've seen some tarmac under a lot of pressure. But over a period of time, what we're doing is upgrading the infrastructure. For example, those overhead lines sag in heat, but the new specification for those overhead lines can withstand higher temperatures, and that's of course the way we need to go across the entire network and across all different types of transport as we look to upgrade, because we are going to see more hot weather.
There's more coming in August across the UK again this year.
But for breakfast viewers this morning who wanted to travel between
August 2022, 38 Celsius. I predicted before anyone else did.
Shouldn't we, governments, over the last few decades, have done
31st of May 2022, plus 40 Celsius.
for this kind of eventuality? Yeah, actually, one of the first conversations I ever had with the chief executive of Network Rail was what we were going to do about the temperatures as they warmed up and how that impacts on our network. And that's actually when we had the conversation about these overhead lines. The problem is, with the best will in the world, this is infrastructure which has taken decades to build. Some of our railways, as you know, stretch back nearly 200 years. And it just takes a very long time to upgrade and replace it. So I think we've got to tackle this from two ends. First of all, make the changes both in this country and globally to tackle climate change. And the UK actually has the best record in the G7, the largest economies, over the last couple of decades of cutting CO2. We lead the pack in doing so, but also upgrading the infrastructure. You mentioned airports. I should say it was only one airport at Luton, and only for a short number of hours yesterday that had some restrictions. The only other airport that I'm aware of was RAF Bryce Norton, so it won't have impacted passengers. And the rest actually coped pretty well, which, given the extreme temperatures, was not too bad. But again, they'll need to spec their runways for higher temperatures more often, and the airports will be doing that. We know the NHS is also struggling. We're getting reports this morning of operating theatres having to close at some hospitals and being cancelled, already dealing with the backlog from COVID and staff shortages and delays with ambulance calls and paramedics. If you had to call for an ambulance for a loved one today, would you be confident that you'd get one in time when you needed it? So I know that the 999 call centres have been ramped up in terms of their staffing over this hot period, because it's not just a question of some services which are, as in the operating elective surgery, being under pressure, but also, of course, more people potentially calling. So I know that they ramped up services yesterday. They've got more people in the call centres, and again, the public can help here by making sure that people, are sensible, stay out of the direct sunlight, particularly during the hottest time of the day, during the afternoon. Make sure, look after loved ones, stay hydrated. I know my parents are, my father's in his 90s, my mum in the 80s. We'll be checking in as a family on them later. I think it's really important we just look out for each other during this exceptionally hot weather. Okay, I hope they're all right. Thank you for joining us.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Hit subscribe to my channel, Sun Gems. May the force be with you always. Got him back spot and the needs some money. That way, you need to subscribe to my channel, Sun Gems. Bye, everyone. Peace, my happy.